They continued to mobilize their equipment. They continued to shut down areas, put road closure signs, etc., etc. They began to set up surveillance equipment of our family. They put up high-tech sound surveillance and photographic surveillance equipment so that they could watch our every move and hear our every sound and every discussion. They began to tap our phones, our cell phones, and we knew that they were being tapped, and I have several evidences that they were being tapped. And they began to set up snipers above on the hills around our house, on the hills, so that they could again control our movement. Again, they hadn't begun gathering cattle. On Saturday, I'm trying to think of the date. It probably would have been a week prior to the 12th, so 7 days. So that would have made it the 5th or the 4th. So they actually, the 5th was Sunday. The 4th would have been the Saturday prior. They April 4th, 2014, they began gathering our cattle. During this mobilization process, I received a phone call from the Cedar City Police Department, which I was in Cedar City, Utah at the time. And the Cedar City Police Department said, "I have a BLM personnel here who wants to speak with you." And I simply said, "I don't speak with the BLM. I don't recognize their existence. Thank you very much." Click. Hung up. So a few minutes later, the phone rang again. It was the same personnel from the Cedar City Police Department, and he says, "BLM's no longer here, but I wanted to talk to you." And he went on to share how he was in favor of what we were doing and that he was on our side, and that the BLM personnel had come to their office looking for me. And then he gave me the BLM person's name and phone number, and I took that number down, and I did decide to call him back. I wasn't going to recognize that they had authority to control the police department and try to contact me in that manner, but I did call this individual, this BLM personnel, back, and he informed me that he was a liaison, or had been placed as a liaison between the BLM and the Bundy family, and that he was here to help us get through this process, and he wanted to know what we were planning to do. He said that I'll help you in any way that I can. And so I said, "Okay, when do you plan on coming?" "Well, we can't give you that information now." "Well, who do you plan on using for contract cowboy?" "We can't give that information out." "Well, who do you plan on hiring for your helicopter services?" "Well, we can't give that information out." And I said, "Well, wait a second. I just thought you said that you would help me with anything that I need to get us through this process." And I says, "What we need is to be able to put restrictive orders on these people so that they can't come and gather our cattle." He says, "Oh, we are coming." And he says, "We want to know what you will do." Now, they have been asking that question of us for 20 years, and the same answer has always been applied. We will do whatever it takes. And they don't know how to interpret that, because they don't know what we will do. And they say, "Well, is it you going to bring guns?" And I said, "We will do whatever it takes." He said, "Well, you can't bring guns." He goes, "Because this will be the next Waco." Crap. They were planning on a Waco type event. They were planning on a Waco type event. And he let me know that that's what the outcome would be. And he says, "You can't be bringing guns and trying to stop us from gathering." I says, and he goes, "We want this to be a peaceful thing." I says, "It's not peaceful when you're stealing and robbing our property. It's not peaceful when you're trying to control our every movement and putting us under, sniper rifles and etc. That's not peaceful." I go, "You have already broken the peace." And And he says, well, we're law enforcement. We have the right to bring the guns. And I says, no, you don't. I go, you have no right. And I says, the best way to make this peaceful is for you not to show up. He says, oh, we're coming. We're coming. Well, obviously there was no liaisoning going on. Obviously he wasn't willing to help me in whatever I needed. Obviously it was a mistake even calling and talking to him. Obviously there was no need to carry on any further conversation or to ever speak with him again, and I haven't since.
Okay, so after that, you started seeing more and more BLM personnel gather around your ranch, and kind of, what was the first incident that kind of started everything?
That makes me sad. I would go to jail if I went and said to some kind of federal building, this is going to be the next Oklahoma City if you don't. I mean, I'd go to jail for that. Yet he has terroristic threatening to you and gets away with it.
Sure, yeah. Sure. Who's the real terrorist here?
Yeah.
Okay, let me describe what was going on. Again, they had placed a high-tech surveillance equipment, sound and video, over our ranch, over our farm. They tapped our phones. They were listening into our every conversation, listening into us here at the ranch, taking video photograph of us constantly. They set snipers up on the hills around about our house.
Did you actually see them, or did somebody see them?
Sure. There were two up here on the hill at one point. There were some up on the other side over here. There were some set across the river here. They had a perimeter around us, and they were being changed in intervals, trying to be secretive about some of them. Others kind of came and went, you know, knowledgeably, but others were being dropped off up high, then hiking down. Trying to be covert about their operation. And
so you could actually see this. You could see them doing this.
Sure. We weren't supposed to have known that it was going on, some of it, but yeah, we were privy to it because we're not that dumb. Okay, we're not that dumb. And we might not have known their every movement. You know, again, their military setup is what they've done. They had basically created a military camp, a military perimeter around us, and we're using all the tactics of military, the highest tech equipment they have.
Well, that kind of brings up the question, well, the BLM officers are not trained in this kind of tactical effort, so who were those people really?
Well, and we understand that they had hired one of their subcontractors to perform some of these operations was Blackwater.
It's now called Academy.
Gosh, is that what they call it? Blackwater Academy? Whatever they want to call themselves, they're still mercenaries, hired mercenaries. Anyway, they began gathering cattle on April 4th, 2014. That was a Saturday. And we had not done anything. We were getting a little bit nervous. We were wanting to, do something. Didn't know what to do. Didn't quite know how to do it. We were all alone. The sheriff was not going to protect us. The governor was not going to protect us. They were not going to uphold their oath of office to protect our rights, our privileges, our property. And my father, trying to receive inspiration on what to do, as he inquired of the Lord. We spent many days in fasting and prayer, trying to seek the guidance, trying to understand what the Lord's will was, because we wanted to work within what His will was. The inspiration that my father had was to do nothing now, and to give them a few days to let them get their hands dirty. Well, they definitely got their hands dirty in a hurry. On Sunday, the second day of their gather, we could see that they were bringing some cattle off the mountain, and that the trucks hauling the cattle were going to converge onto Highway 170, which is the road between here and Bunkerville, at Sheep Troughs Road, which is a road that accesses the mountain and our rangeland. So we had set up just to observe these cattle coming off the mountain, and we were on Highway 170. That's a state road. It's a state highway. It used to be Highway 91 until they built I-15. And in other words, it's been in the state ownership for a very, very long time. And there were four vehicles parked there at the location of that road. At the beginning, there was only one BLM truck there guarding the entrance to that road, which that's what they had done. They had set up BLM vehicles guarding the entrances of every road and every trail to the land off of the pavement. So first of all, there was only one truck there. But then many more began to move in. And one vehicle drove up on the hill and let out 4 individuals, and those individuals grabbed their rifles, their sniper rifles, and they set up a 4-man sniper team up on the hill, and then faced those guns directly at me and my sisters and brother-in-law, and I had my wife and I had 2 children with me. And they got down in their prone position, ready to fire type of position, and I was able to look through the binoculars directly down their scopes, down their rifle barrels, as they pointed at me and my family. There were about 11 or 12 vehicles total by the time they'd all kind of gathered around, and then they converged on us, and they informed us that we were in violation of some code or another, which, who knows, and then they can rattle off code numbers, and they're just numbers. What does that mean to me? And that we had to leave the area, and so I began to leave, but my brother Dave was not leaving. And he had with him an iPad, and he had that iPad up like this, and he was filming with that iPad. And then he had got on the phone, and the phone call that I understand he was talking to was 911, because he can see these men converging upon us, and he knew that there was going to be incident, and that was the act that he was in when they attacked him. They threw him to the ground. They put his face into the pavement and the gravel, and they put a knee on the other side of his face and rubbed his face into the gravel. As many men as could fit on top of him were on top of him, beating him. Okay? For filming, but you got to realize, remember the First Amendment areas? He had no right, according to their edicts, of freedom of press, freedom of religion, freedom of speech. Okay, so he was in violation of their rights according to territorial law, according to their federal code. Okay, is this America? Do we have rights? Do we have the Bill of Rights? Is this the state of Nevada, or is this simply the district or territory of Nevada? Okay, we obviously could see what they thought it was. Threatened to fire upon us. They had 20-something plus agents there. I didn't have a full count on them, but I know they brought 11 or 12 vehicles, and each vehicle had at least 2 individuals in it, if not more. And so they kidnapped my brother, and they and that's a whole other story you ought to get from him. But let me tell you about that 911 call. Again, to show that we had no support, no help from anyone. That 911 call went into the city of Mesquite, Nevada. And the dispatcher there informed my brother that he was occupying an important line, and that he better get off the line, or he'd be charged with federal felony charges, and that if he called back, he would be charged with felony charges. So there was no response from 911 for any type of help. Furthermore, on that I-70 or 170 road, which loops into Mesquite and goes around I-15 and then back on 170, there's a loop. There were as many as 6 highway patrol that had been looping in both directions around that loop. At the time of that incident, there was a highway patrol right there close, and he parted and he left. Instead of staying and protecting us according to state law, he departed and left the scene so that he wouldn't be involved.
Now you remember a couple weeks ago, the city council, which is kind of a big name for the Bunkerville Community Council. Town council, right? They had a meeting, and the man that was chairing that, who's on the board, is also a Metro officer.
Correct.
And he admitted that they had been given orders not to respond to anyone in the community.
That's correct. That's correct. Now I want to say that he is a good guy. I do like him. But again, he's a deputy, and a deputy only has authority through the county sheriff. Again, remember we talked about that? The county sheriff's the one with the true authority. Then he in turn hires deputies to help him to do his duty. But a deputy does not have the authority in and of himself. He has the only authority that the sheriff gives to him. And so the sheriff had told him, Tim, and all his deputies to not get involved, to not respond to our calls, to not...
Or lose their jobs.
Or to lose their jobs. Well, that's always the case. Okay, so yeah, that was the case. All right, so that was the first incident. The BLM definitely got their hands dirty with that situation. 2 days later, so this would have been Tuesday, they again dirtied their hands. This time they were bringing a dump truck and a backhoe unit off the mountain. We could see them coming from afar off. Now I'd have to question, what does a dump truck and a backhoe have to do with gathering cattle? A backhoe and a dump truck. That just doesn't make sense. And so we were concerned. We'd already heard rumor and tale and gunshots in the hills that they had been shooting our cattle. So we assumed that there were dead cattle in the dump truck that they had been gathering up, and we wanted to witness the cattle. So we intercepted their equipment as it come to I-170 again, and there was incident there. There was a bunch of us at this point. We were on foot, and the BLM officer grabbed a 57-year-old woman who had just recently survived cancer, but she was there in support, and grabbed her by the midsection and literally chucked her with all his force to the ground. A frail little old woman. And then my brother, in her defense...
Which brother?
Ammon. In her defense, and also trying to find out what was in the truck, faced off with the BLM, and they tased him with 80,000 volt tasers or 50,000 volt tasers, whatever they are, 3 times. And they sicked a German Shepherd dog on him. Now, my brother is very tough, but I would say that the Spirit of the Lord must have been there, because my brother did not go down to the ground. He ripped the tasers from him the first time. The second time, a cousin grabbed the taser out of his neck for him, and the third time he was able to get the tasers out again also. They sicked the dog on him, and he kicked the dog in the nose, and the dog turned and ran between his commander's legs. He didn't want any part of him. So one man to take 3 shots from 50,000 volt tasers, and and be attacked by a trained police dog and not to go to the ground is pretty something.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Anyway, they stood off there for a little while, and right at the end of the standoff, my brother was able to jump up into the back of the truck and see what was there. Now, what was there was not dead cattle, but it was part of our infrastructure to the ranch. It was water lines, water troughs, water tanks that they had been destroying and decimating and removing from our rangeland. And so this material represented much investment. You know, again, we talked about grazing fees paying for these type of things, which we did not pay into. We paid for these. These were particular ones that we had paid for ourselves. We didn't have help from grazing boards. We paid for these ourselves. Anyway, that incited the people. All right, that was the incident that really started to incite people. The first incident with my brother Davey, it wasn't recorded, it wasn't videoed. We did have some pictures of the snipers on the hill, but we didn't get video of the incident. So this was the first video of incident that happened, and it went out to the public and the people, and they heard our story, and they could see that we had no protection from law enforcement. We had no protection from our sheriff, and the people could see that we were being abused, and that the power of government was overpowering and was incorrect. The federal government is the only legitimate purpose for government of any level. The only legitimate purpose of government is to protect the life, liberty, and property of the people. Okay, it's not to steal and abuse and rob and kill and plunder and snipe. Okay, that's not what our government's supposed to do. And so the people through this video started to see the true problems and the real problems, and we began to receive aid from militias and from the public. And Operation Mutual Aid, which is a militia group, were the first to call and said, we're on our way. And that person, Ryan Payne, was the first to respond, and he drove the night through. He came from Montana. I don't know how many hours away it was, but he got in his vehicle. He came with some supplies and equipment, and he drove through the night to be here by the next day to help, to aid. Now,
that must have felt good.
It did.